Well, it's June now, and that means one thing, and that's recruiting. Recruiting. This is usually when you start seeing official visits. This is a big recruiting month, and this weekend was Nebraska's first recruits, June 2nd, June 3rd. So let's get a feel of where these players that came in, where they might be leaning, and maybe what they thought. The first one up is Peyton Morgan. He is a safety from Pflugerville, Texas. He's 6'1", 170 pounds. He's rated 53rd overall in Texas by 0-3, 313th nationally, a nationally ranked player. He is considered a 4-star. Had a great weekend. You're going to see that all these players loved the weekend. They loved Lincoln. But this is also their first official visit. A lot of times these are these young men's first ever official visit. So they kind of will give you that overwhelming, great, oh, it's a 10, perfect, because they haven't had any others to compare it to. And when they finally go on some of these other official visits, they're going to realize they're probably mostly all the same. So even though we heard a lot of great things and praised the Huskers and the city, because a lot of them wanted to get a feel with the city, get a feel with the school, talk to other players, you're going to see a lot of the same things when they go to other schools. But let's get to what they thought here and where we think they might be leaning. Peyton Morgan, he's really highly leaning towards Texas Tech, and I even feel that's where he's going to go. You're going to probably see Texas Tech a lot on these players' list because the coach there is Joey McGuire, and if you remember, Joey McGuire was a coach under Matt Rule at Baylor, and so you're probably going to see some of the same coaching strategies, some of the recruiting thinking, a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism, and so you're probably going to see the same types of players for Texas Tech and Joey McGuire as you will for Matt Rule in Nebraska. Peyton did have a great weekend. He enjoyed his weekend, had a lot of great things. He loved the students' remarks. He got to talk to a lot of the other players and kind of really loved the town as well. So I feel that we did make some progress, but I still think Texas Tech is probably going to snatch him up. I don't see Nebraska grabbing him. Would be nice to grab him. He's a great young man, great player. Love to have that talent, that speed, but it might be just a little too late. Trust me, winning means a lot, and that's where Nebraska's probably hurting more than anything. The next one is Mario Buford. He is a cornerback, 5'11", just under 170 pounds, out of DeSoto, Texas, which is just south of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Now, Mario is another one that really loved his trip here. He's always kind of liked Nebraska. Mario's been here a few times. This is his 4th visit to Lincoln, and I put Nebraska high on his list. I've got Nebraska way up there getting this commit, so I feel like Mario will be one Nebraska will snatch up, and this weekend went great. He's another one that loved his trip here. He is a 4-star cornerback. 0-3 has him the 314th overall player in the nation. Great speed, great quickness, which you're going to see that on almost all these players. So, but I feel like he's leaning more towards Nebraska with Texas Tech right behind him. Again, that's where I was telling you about. Texas Tech's going to be in a lot of these. So, but I think Mario Buford is ours to grab, and I live in this area close to Mario, so I've seen a lot of his games, seen him live, and he's a great athlete, great talent. So if we get him, that's a big plus. The next one on the list is Jacory Barney. He is a wide receiver out of Miami, Florida, and it's hard to grab kids out of the South Florida area, especially when you're a school from the north. Miami is definitely in play here as well, the Hurricanes. But it's kind of, and that, that's his hometown, and it's kind of hard to grab kids out of Florida. But Nebraska's done it before. I do feel Nebraska had a good visit, had a good rapport. He's 6 foot, 160 pounds. 0-3 has him as a 3-star, 459th player in the nation. But he is one that I feel like Nebraska has a good chance of getting. I have Nebraska in the lead here of grabbing Jacory Barney, with Miami, Florida, and Illinois right behind him. But it's not going to be easy. He does still have an official visit to Illinois on June 23rd, and I feel like probably by the end of the month he'll probably be making his decision. And right now I would give Nebraska the edge when it comes to Barney. The next one is Joseph Anderson. He is an edge defensive end player, 6'5", 210 pounds. He's rated as a 3-star by 0-3, 569th player nationally. He's another one. He's out of the St. Louis, Missouri area. As far as I know, Nebraska's his only official visit at this time, but that could change. It's still early in June. But I feel he's leaning towards Iowa right now. Nebraska is in a hunt. I think it's kind of a toss-up a little bit. But I kind of feel like he's leaning more towards Iowa. But I could see him committing to Matt Rule once he gets here, before it's all over with and all and done. I could see Rule convincing him to come to Lincoln. But Iowa is recruiting him hard. And one thing I do know, kids can feel when a team really, really wants them, and Iowa's really going all out. And so I could easily see, I just got him leaning slightly towards Iowa. But let's not give up yet, because like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if Rule convinced him to come to Lincoln. To me, it's basically a toss-up. I just got him leaning towards Iowa right now. The next one is another Texas kid, Dante Carter. He's also another Texas Tech recruit that Nebraska is trying to take away from him. He is a safety out of Cibolo, Texas, 6'2", 172 pounds. So he's got great length, especially for the secondary. 0-3 has him as a 3-star, 570th player overall. Dante also took a trip to Vanderbilt a couple weeks ago, and he was pretty impressed with Vandy, and he does plan to take an official visit now to Vanderbilt on June 23rd. Currently, he's only holding 2 official visits, which is Nebraska this weekend and then Vanderbilt. So we got to keep an eye on Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's creeping up there, but right now, I give Vanderbilt the edge, with Texas Tech right behind them, and then Nebraska behind Tech and Vandy. So Nebraska and Rule has his work cut out for him if they want to grab this young man. But he is there. He's got great quickness, great speed. Like I said, you're going to hear that a lot on a lot of these players. That's just Rule's thing. A great athlete. I do see him playing probably in the secondary, but he could easily, mainly depending on his strength and conditioning, I could see him moving up, playing that linebacker spot or maybe even the edge. But with that speed, if we could get him in there, he could be kind of like a Michael Parsons kind of player, which, as you see how dominating that could be. The next one is Carlin Jones, another Texas kid, Bay City, Texas. He's a defensive lineman, 6'4", 260 pounds. 0-3 has him as a 3-star player, 661st player nationally. Carlin has about 3 or 4 official visits on his resume right now. The University of Texas San Antonio, where I feel like he's leaning closely there. Nebraska's probably right behind him, but I think the University of Texas San Antonio probably going to grab him. I think he probably wants to stay closer to home, but Nebraska's right there, and I could see Nebraska snatching him up. Right now, he's going to take official visits to Cal and Georgia Tech later this month, but the 2 schools that are in the lead are Nebraska and UTSA, but don't count the Cougars out as well there in the Houston area, as they could be sneaking in here and could snatch him up too. But right now I think he's leaning towards the University of Texas San Antonio, with Nebraska right behind them. But again, another kid that we could strengthen up that defensive line. We definitely need some defensive line depth. So this is one that you want to keep an eye on and hope that Nebraska can pull them away from the Texas area. The next one on there is my sleeper, which is Dallas Christian's William Nettles. He is a cornerback, 6'1", 175 pounds, great speed, great quickness. Actually has great hands, could easily play wide receiver. I think he did play wide receiver in high school. He's one that I think Nebraska is going to end up getting. He also raved about this weekend. He loved his visit, but again, this was his first official visit. So right now he's got, I think, a couple more by the end of this month, and he wants to make a decision by mid-July, maybe at latest end of July. But Dallas Christian, again, is another school right in this area I've been to. I used to referee football games, and I refereed many of Dallas Christian school games back in the 90s, late 90s. A great school. It's a private school, and I've seen William play a couple times, and he's a great athlete, great quickness, great speed. And like I said, he has great hands. I could see him, if he ends up playing that secondary position, being one of those ball hogs that gets a lot of interceptions, a lot of picks. And if he gets his hands on the ball, he could usually come down to it. And I think that's where he really wants to play. I think he really wants to be on the secondary side. So 0-3 has him as a 3-star recruit, 650th nationally player overall. Again, cornerback in Dallas Christian School, which is obviously in the Dallas area. It's actually Mesquite, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas. The next one is another Florida kid out of Miami, which is Amari Sanders. He's a cornerback, 6'2", just under 170 pounds. 0-3 has him as a 3-star player, 655th overall nationally. I do see Nebraska in the lead here, slightly in the lead. It's got great length. Amari is another South Florida kid that Brule is trying to grab. And again, it's kind of hard to grab kids out of the South Florida area, but right now I think Nebraska is leading the edge, leading on this young man. Louisville is right behind there, so I could see Louisville making a strong push, also along with the Hurricanes there in his hometown. So, but I do kind of give the edge right now to Nebraska, but you never know. The last one is a homegrown kid out of Omaha. He's an offensive tackle, 6'5", 310 pounds, great size for a 17, 18-year-old young man. He's a prime example of what Rule is looking for, especially a home state kid. These are, to me, these are the young men you want to make sure stay home. Tom Osborne was good about getting these young men to stay home, wanting to play for Nebraska, especially when you get someone that really loves their home school and really wants to play for them, willing just to walk on to play at the school. They seem to me work harder, try harder, and become better players. So, and Caleb is an outstanding offensive tackle. To me, he's a great offensive tackle, mainly at 310 pounds. He's considered a 3-star by 0-3, 784th player nationally. But this is a home state young man we really need to grab, not only just because he's in the state, but because tackle is in a position we need to start improving on. The whole offensive line is where we need to start improving on. So to me, it's key to grab Caleb and get him to commit to Nebraska. Right now, I give Nebraska a slight edge. I think it's more of a toss-up between Nebraska and Minnesota. Minnesota's making a push for them. Also, Illinois. So feel like Nebraska does have a slight edge, but to me, it's kind of more Nebraska, Minnesota, Illinois, really pushing for this young man. And Minnesota knows how to recruit offensive linemen, so that ought to be a good sign right here that we're trying to grab this young man. I also kind of wanted to give you an update on 3 of the top recruits out of Santa Ana, California. Offensive tackle Brandon Baker, who is the #1 overall tackle in the country. Also defensive lineman Aydin Breeland, probably top 10, top 5 in the country. And running back Nathaniel Frazier, again, another top player in the country at his position. All 3 of these came to Nebraska. Brandon's been here a couple times, came to the spring game. He even convinced Aiden Breeland to come to the spring game. All of them really loved Nebraska, had a great feel, but all of them really wanted to see more, wanted to see more of a game day, so I could see them coming back in the season to watch a game, maybe that Michigan game. I also feel like they want to see what Rhule's really up to. It's really kind of hard to get a feel on practice, what they're doing. So I think they want to see more of how's this culture going to be. But overall, the facilities, the new facilities, the city, the fans, they really love this atmosphere. Now, don't get me wrong, Brandon chose his top schools just a couple of days ago. And even though he did say he was going to give Nebraska an official visit, Nebraska was not in them schools. Doesn't mean he still won't come out to Lincoln. I could still see him coming during a game during the season, but I could also see him committing. He originally wanted to commit in December, but I've heard word now he kind of wants to make a decision earlier. Aiden Breland's already said he's wanting to make a decision before his senior season starts, so I could see him making a decision. Right now, I've got Oregon leading for both of these young men, with Georgia right behind that. Nebraska's a long shot on both these young men. When you don't win like Nebraska hasn't been winning, it's hard to grab top players like this. So doesn't mean we can't, but it's a very long shot. And even though they do commit, even if they commit to Georgia or even if they commit to Oregon, I could still see them coming out during a game, during the season, just to see the atmosphere, to see how it is. Doesn't mean they'll commit. Doesn't mean if they got here and loved it and it's all what they expected or more, that they change their mind and come to the Huskers. But it would give Nebraska a better chance to grab these young men. And Nathaniel Frazier, same way. I think Nathaniel's looking more towards Alabama. I don't know if Frazier's going to come back out to Lincoln. I know he talked about he would, but I got a feeling he's going to be committing to Alabama. But I would love to have him if he would come to Lincoln. Also, we did have Daniel Carlin this weekend. He's here to help recruit these young men, talk to these players. He says he's going to be here a lot during these June official visits, so it's great to see our quarterback doing that, which obviously you see a lot of quarterbacks. Dylan Rayola's even doing it for Georgia. Quarterbacks is one position you will see them recruit other players, mainly because they're as good as the players around them. You need offensive linemen to protect them, and you need the running backs and the wide receivers to make the plays. So they're as good as the official players around them. So thanks to Daniel for coming out there, and we'll be seeing him more. So, and if you don't mind, please subscribe and help us get to that 1,000 subscribe marker by the end of the month. I'd really appreciate that. But again, thank you for watching, and until the next video, go Big Red.